And now, Move the Sticks with Daniel, Jeremiah, and Bucky Brooks.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ and Buck with you. And Buck, next week at this time, already be in Pittsburgh, and we'll be really getting to the finish line to get this draft here, man. It's finally here, dude. It's taken forever.
Yeah, it's taking forever, and we're going through the normal things, right? We're hearing the last minute info. We're hearing things that are being dropped. Players are rising. Players are falling. This team likes this guy and not that guy. All of it. So now I'm at the point where, like, let's get to it. Let's be done with it. Let's see where they go.
Yeah, I don't know how you are, but like the over the years, the information side of it versus the instinct side of it, like there's a reason why some folks who do mock drafts, like way on the periphery, right, have better scores than people who are talking to these teams on a daily basis, because sometimes you're just better off using intuition and observation than information.
Yeah, and every year, like, guys will kind of use sources or insiders to kind of fly up the balloon to get people chasing one thing to set up something that else is going to happen. And that's why it's really difficult in terms to pour into the mock draft. And I know they're so popular, but I mean, it's a who's who when it comes to it. We'll talk about it. We'll discuss it. But the part that I like is just trying to figure out who these players are going to be once they get into the league, and try and put your pencil down when it gets to that.
Yeah, I want to hit you up on this one real quick. If you like, I think I saw that list the other day. I believe Ty Simpson's name was on there of guys going to the draft. Which, again, like if you're going to go to the draft, you think you got some pretty good intel there. You know what I mean? Like that was just kind of one of those pieces of information that you kind of notice and pop up, and I was like, okay, well that perked me up a little bit there.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think if he's going to go, particularly if he's going to be the only quarterback there, now that Fernando Mendoza said that he's staying home, they have to set him up for success. Like, you don't want to see an Aaron Rodgers situation. You don't want to see a Geno Smith situation where he's there and he doesn't go. Yeah, like, you want to make sure that he's set up to have a good time, and it's not an embarrassing moment. It's one that can be celebrated. So maybe they know. Maybe the league knows something that we don't know yet, but if he's going, he has to feel confident that he's going to hear his name called day one.
Yeah, that was just one of the things I was looking at. All right, it's time for Hot or Not, brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. I want to go through these teams that have multiple picks and what should be their order of operation and what they should attack first as you look towards it. But I do want to start off with another conversation, and that do you get to this point as you're going through these players, and I've been doing it and looking at these teams, and, you know, we always just talk like play like a Raven. And we're like, okay, well, this guy feels like a Raven, or this, that, or the other. Like,
yes.
I'll give you an example. I'm looking at it, trying to marry some players with teams and going, okay, where they are on the board. I don't know if it marries up, but man, like that's just too good of a fit. Like, it makes too much sense. Like, I'll give you one, and then see what you have on that front. But like, I think of Monroe Freeling, right, from Georgia. So all the talent in the world, hasn't played a ton. He's a little bit raw, but all of this athletic ability, it's all in there. And I think about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that.
About him. Like, first of all, it's Georgia. They love Georgia guys. We know that. Georgia and Alabama players. He doesn't have to be that guy this year. But, I mean, look, if Lane misses a couple games, he steps in. But they get their starter a year ahead of time. And he just, man, that player and that team match perfectly. Now, I don't think he gets to where they're picking. They're picking 23, so maybe they have to slide up a little bit to get him. But that was just one example when you're kind of going through and looking at these guys going, man, that feels like a this team player.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you brought up Monroe Freeling in Philadelphia, because that's the first thing I thought about. I thought about the success that they've had developing Jeremiah and other guys that, you know, with Jeff Stoutland there, who's no longer in that same role. But I just thought it'd be a nice fit. But DJ, for us to be able to identify those type teams, they have to have a clear identity in terms of who they are. You know exactly who they are when you close your eyes and you envision this team coming to town. You know what they're going to play like and those things. And I think there has to be some clarity to that. You talk about Philadelphia, understanding that. I've always felt like I had a pretty good feel for who the Ravens and the Steelers and those type teams are going to take. And I think it's because you're very outward about identifying the types of players and the types of team that you want to have. So everyone in the league knows this is how they play. These are the kind of players that they operate with.
Yeah, I'll give you another one here when I was going through it, and it was all the way up there in the top 10. So one of the names been discussed a lot, and we've talked about him as well. When you think about Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver at Arizona State, look, the ability is there. I mean, I think you have him as the top wideout in the draft, and I can totally understand that and see that. I mean, he's a very gifted dude. It's just really the durability is kind of the main concern or question mark there. And so I was going through and looking at it and going through these teams, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, New Orleans, I mean, really, it's kind of Chris Olave, and that's about it. You get a quarterback you take last year who had durability questions and concerns. Well, it looks like they hit that one, got that one right. So they'd be a little bit more tolerant, I think, of some of the injuries and feel more comfortable with that. Also, the fact that they do have that quarterback, you know how it is, Buck. When you get that shiny toy, the quarterback, it's such a fun environment in the building, and there's this excitement. You want to put pieces around them so you can show them off a little bit. So that's why I'm just looking at it and going, man, I could see that. New Orleans, you've got Kellen Moore. Kellen Moore's had success when he's been on teams that have multiple wideouts. Going to the Super Bowl in Philly with that group, like I could see him fitting for them there at 8.
Yeah, I think he absolutely would fit. And I think the reason he fits is because Chris Olave is so dynamic, whatever can bounce inside and outside. Jordyn Tyson can do some of those things. And when you go back and look at Kellen Moore, we talk about having 2 wide receivers. I think it's now imperative that you have 2 guys that are high-end guys, whether they're code number 1s or 1A, 1B, whatever you want to designate it. You have to have multiple receivers. It's no longer the day of, I just got 1 wide receiver and then a bunch of slugs on the other side. You have to have that. And with Tyler Shep playing the way that he played, because he's still on that rookie contract and it's so cheap, I think you do want to load it up because you want to see, hey, what is his ceiling? What is Tyler Shep's ceiling so we can figure out if we have a legitimate chance to go all the way with him and we can build our team. I would love to see Jordyn Tyson go there. I told you, he gives me some JSN vibes in terms of how easy it is for him catching and running routes. But the injury history is significant. We'll see if it works out, though.
Yeah, I do feel like on a greater point in this draft, I feel like everybody is saying the same things about players, and it gets misconstrued as you love this one, you don't like that one, vice versa. And I'm saying, no, this is the challenge. It's not identifying the player. Like we discussed, if me and you sat down and had a discussion about the pros and cons of Jordyn Tyson, it would sound exactly the same. Like it would be identical. But then it's just, okay, well then where do you value the risk versus the reward? And that's, okay, where do you slot him then after that because of those factors? That's what the draft is, man. It's the evaluation, the value of them. Where do you value them, not the identification of them?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great point because there's certain guys that we talk about, like Jordyn Tyson in a top 10 pick. Ugh. Jordyn Tyson, top of the second round. Yeah, he's not me up because you're mitigating the risk, but it is all about the value. We've had long conversations about positional value and why you take certain positions higher. Some of them you're a little more reluctant to take, and it comes down to value. And that's what this is. This is an econ class.
Yeah, no question. Is there one player team that you just kind of come back to and say, man, that, that guy was kind of put on this earth to play for that team or in that spot, in that scheme?
Vega Ioane going to the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
If in a perfect world they could just walk up and just play a pickup game and you could have the first pick and pick your guy, I think Jesse Mentor because be like, yeah, give me him. We'll take him. We'll go and play. I think he fits. I think there's a toughness factor to him that they would love and celebrate. So to me, he is an ideal fit at this spot.
Yeah, no, I think that one makes a lot of sense. The other thing I was thinking about with them is a little bit later on down the draft. When you look at the fact that they lost Linderbaum, right? So Linderbaum goes away, and I started thinking about, okay, the Ravens. Kirk Ferentz has a deep ties there with the Ravens.
Lucas Jones.
Well, I'm just looking at that. Yeah, Logan Jones. I'm just sitting there going, I mean, you already lost the Iowa center. You had Marshall Yanda back in the day. They've always loved having Iowa players, especially offensive linemen. I'm like, okay, Logan Jones is kind of a plug-and-play center. He's a little bit older. He's 24 years old, but he plays with incredible awareness. He's got some athleticism, some torque, and some power. I mean, it's just kind of out with one Iowa guy in with another Iowa guy. Makes some sense.
Man, he is terrific in zone, man. You just talked about the Iowa thing, and that goes all the way back to the connection with Kirk Ferentz and the Cleveland Browns and
Yep.
Belichick and the intel and the trust that was established there. It makes, a ton of sense. We talk about the Hawkeyes and how they just have a tendency to play. I absolutely can see him kind of fitting in and blending in there.
All right, we're going to get to some priorities next here, but that was this week's Hot or Not segment brought to you by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. Store more and do more with your data. Try them for free at wasabi.com. Buck, we're going to pause. We're going to come right back, and I want to hit you on some priorities. We'll get to that right after this. All right, I want to roll through some of these teams, multiple picks, and what you think the priority should be. And we can kind of kick this around a little bit. And I want to start, I'm not going to start with the first one that has 2 picks, because that would be the New York Jets picking there at 2, and they also hold pick 16. I'm going to start with the next one, which is the Cleveland Browns, which I think is a fun discussion. 6 and 24. Offensive tackle, receiver have been the 2 positions we've discussed with them. So as we are sitting here, less than 2 weeks away, what should be the priority at 6?
Well, I think if you're Cleveland, you've been struggling for so long to fix your offensive line, regardless of who's going to be the quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders, Deshaun Watson, Dylan Gabriel, whoever. You got to make sure that they're protected. So I'm going to get the offensive tackle first. I'm going to come back and get a playmaker with the second pick. The reason why I want to take the pass protector first is because you have the pick of the litter right now when you're picking at 6. And we can talk about, well, is that a stretch based on grades? Maybe, maybe not. I just know if I have an opportunity to get the best one, whether that's Francis Mauigoa, whether that's Spencer Fano, whether it's even Monroe Freeling, who has been talked about up there, whatever it is, I want to make sure for my line in Cleveland, I get the best offensive tackle prospect that I can get, because I feel like, and we say this all the time, there are a slew of wide receivers. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just saying that they're all graded evenly, but I think the drop-off is more significant from the elite of the offensive tackles and the also-rans versus the elite wide receivers and the next tier behind it.
Yeah, I'd think of it as, what would you be sick to your stomach if you missed out on at 24? I think if you missed out on the receivers, you'd be like, man, I really wanted Denzel Boston, but he's gone. Yeah. We can pivot. It's going to be tough to pivot, man. If you don't get the tackle, I think you'd be sweating bullets. Unless there's another plan in place where they want to rip the receiver at 6 and then come back up from 24. But now you're trading picks. To me, I think it just makes the logical move is you're going to take the tackle, and you're going to ideally get someone that could play on the left side, which is, I know he played on the right side, but I think Spencer Fano has the athleticism to be able to kick over and play on the left side. That's why I keep coming back to him at 6.
Look, I think you have to. And DJ, one thing we also know is when that first one goes, you can see them come off the board like popcorn. It's because no one is going to wait. And the teams that are waiting in the 20s, hoping that they get there, the worst thing that could happen for them if the run happens really early. Because then supply and demand, you're not going to be there. And people know where the drop-off is. After Max Ahanachour, it's open season.
Yeah, I always look for, like, who's the mark? Like, who is the team that's the target that you like, okay, well, we got to get ahead of them. And I think when you look kind of in the 10 to 20 range, I'm sitting there looking at Detroit at pick 17 going, okay, if you're one of these teams in the 20s that needs a tackle, probably need to get to 16, Yeah,
100%. And because they need one Taylor Deckers out the door, they need to find a left tackle. Conversations about Penei Sewell going from right to left. Yeah. But regardless, you know that they're looking for one, whether it's a right or a left. You better jump ahead of them, because then it becomes what I call the offensive tackle row. We could talk about, like, you got Detroit, then you have Pittsburgh, you have the Eagles can take one. You have the Niners that are down there at 27.
Yeah, Cleveland.
You have Cleveland.
If they don't take one early.
Yeah, you have the Texans who could take a lineman. I mean, there's an alley where those guys are going to go. And I want to be on the front end, not the back end of that alley.
Yeah, sweating it out, seeing who's going to be there. So, I definitely feel the same way that Cleveland should do that. Now, a team that doesn't have 2 first-round picks but does have one right at the top of the second round, and that is pick number 34. Arizona, I do think they want to come away with a quarterback. So I'm looking at that, and obviously Ty Simpson would be the one we connect the dots to there with them. So I've been going through this whole process with Simpson and figuring out where he could go. And my radar would go up if Arizona moves up or down. In other words, if Arizona gets out of 3 and trades down, pretty significantly, then I would say, okay, they've just got a bunch of extra picks. They freed themselves up. They could take Ty Simpson there. Or if Arizona comes up from 34, they could end up taking him in the 20s just to get the extra year and all that jazz. But any movement by Arizona to me feels like it's a movement to try and get in Ty Simpson world.
I mean, because DJ, like now that we've talked about, the closer we get to the draft, the more we're realizing, man, the quarterback carousel, it just pretty much stopped spinning.
Yeah.
The guys that we're talking about are developmental guys. We talked about we talked about Pittsburgh, but are they really going to do that when Aaron Rodgers presumably comes back? You have Mason Rudolph. You took one last year, and Will Howard. You kind of float for a year and then come back and address it next year. The Minnesota Vikings have kind of shorted their thing with Kyler Murray. I mean, you have the Falcons. All these teams have seemingly addressed their
Miami
quarterback
did it.
spot.
Yeah.
Miami did it. So where do you go? And for Ty Simpson, where he gets maybe a little hairy or scary, what if the Cardinals don't take him either at the bottom of the first round, top of the second? Like, where's the destination?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hoping on the Rams trying to find their eventual successor there. Maybe that's a situation where if the Rams moved around the board, they could come into play at some point in time. But the reason why I wanted to get to this discussion is because it feels to me, Arizona, that's going to be a quarterback will be their second pick. So it's of all the scenarios for them to come away with a quarterback, to me, the one that makes the most sense is either stick and pick, right there at 3, or maybe a little baby trade back and still get one of those premier players you like. And that could end up being Maui Noah. And you feel like, okay, we could slide back just ahead of Cleveland and still get him. So if there's a little movement, they can maybe make a little trade, but it feels like let's get a big guy in the boat and then we'll come back and we'll try and figure out the quarterback thing. And I do think that's Ty Simpson. But do they sit and be patient and wait till 34? Do they get jumpy? That would be something I'd keep an eye on.
Yeah, I would keep an eye on it. And the thing that I would say about getting jumpy, man, if you feel that strongly about the player at 3, take him at 3. Don't get cute. Yeah. Don't walk away without getting the player that you want. If there's a player that you want, take it.
I think that we just saw it last year, though. I mean, we saw the Giants like Jackson Dart. There's a difference between like and love, right? Yeah. So they were going to pass up Abdul Carter. They took Abdul Carter, then came and got Jackson Dart. Last year, the Saints, I mean, I think they really liked Tyler Shuck, but there was a little bit of concern there. So they ended up taking the tackle, Banks, and then they ended up getting Shuck after that. So, I mean, I think that's kind of the difference is if you like him or do you love him. If you love him, you just rip it at 3 and, whatever. I don't care any criticism I might get. That's our guy. We're going to take him. If you like him, you try and finesse it and figure out the right way to get him.
And that also is a big thing. You talk about being in like and being in love. If you love him, you don't want to go. You can't live without him. You're going to regret. You're going to kick yourself if you don't walk away with the kid on your team. If you like him, man, you think highly of him. But if he goes elsewhere, you're like, oh, okay, that happened. So that's the huge difference.
Yeah, we'll be okay if that were to happen. All right, let's get to Jets. I mean, priority first. I do think they would like to get a receiver at some point in time, but it feels like I think the obvious thing there is they're going to take one of those defensive players, one of those pass rushers first.
Yeah, and I think they have to take one. The big thing that they have to determine, do they want to take one that doesn't have as much developmental stuff that you have to work out? Like Arvell Reese has been a 1-year starter. Arvell Reese, you're asking to be linebacker. You ask him to be pass rusher. You ask him to do a bunch of different things. How quickly can he kind of process all those things and get it worked out where he's making an impact? And the other, I had to do a deep dive on David Bailey. And it's funny, your comp for him at the Combine with Brian Burns, DJ, I don't know if I can think of a better comp. Like going back and watching him for the second and third time, I remember I went all the way where I was Googling my report on Brian Burns and what I thought about him or whatever. And it was one of those things because I do remember his uncle, Stanley McGlover, coming at me because I wasn't as high on him because I felt like he was kind of one-dimensional as a speed rusher. And then when I look at Bailey, I'm saying the same thing. But for the Jets, what they need is they need someone who can right now impact the quarterback. And I think the more that I look at him, the more I see first step quickness, burst, all of those things, spin move. he's going to give people problems where he's going to fall into maybe 10 sacks just because he is so dynamic and his effort is at a high level.
And he's got a feel for it too. We always talk about technicians as receivers and pass rushers. Like he's got a good feel, gets guys leaning, like you mentioned, that little spin move he'll hit them with. He's got a good feel for it. So I do think that's not a shocker. That's a direction that they end up going with one of those defensive players. Kansas City, if you're going to say priority for them at 9, normally when you're a team that's, been to all these Super Bowls and had their success and you end up, with one of these picks off of, one kind of outlier year, you can sit there and just take best available player because your roster's in pretty good shape. Do you feel like they are in that spot where they can take best available, or do they need to be hunting for one specific thing?
I think they need to be hunting for one specific thing. And I'm going to say this because I believe now 9 is early, I think, for the player. But DJ, if they don't get anybody that can replace what Travis Kelce does, it changes their situation with the team. We can look at all the receivers that they've thrown through there to try and help Pat Mahomes. The one thing that's been the constant throughout Pat Mahomes' success has been the connection with the tight end. Because it's over the middle of the field, because you can do so much to create mismatches, to me, they have to find a dynamic tight end. We can talk about whether it's Kenyon Sadiq, whether at 9 or at bottom, or if it's somebody else in the second round. They have to find the heir apparent to Travis Kelce for this offense to operate the way that they want to operate for the next 5 years. It has to be a priority. And they haven't invested in the position like that. They've thrown little darts, but they haven't said, hey, let's get a first, second, third round tight end here. Initially to pair with Travis Kelce, but now to replace him. I think they got to prioritize that position.
Yeah, that's an interesting call, man. That would be, that's not much higher than where I have him, where I have Sadiq graded and stacked. He's like my 14th, 15th player in there. So at pick number 9, I guess I wouldn't be shocked there. They also have, they have 9, 29, 40. So they got 3 picks in the top 40. So is there, to me, I look at a guy as more kind of the pass catcher, like Eli Stowers, maybe 40. They have 40 and 74. He likely goes kind of in between those 2 picks, but maybe it's 40 and they just say, we want to, rip it there. And we could take care of some other stuff there with the first 2 picks and then get somebody who's real athletic at the tight end spot.
Yeah, no, they absolutely can do it. And before I was thinking like, it's imperative that they go and get the right tackle. And that's a big part of it. But also what's imperative is they got to fix the secondary too. Get 2 starters leave. Jalen Watkins and
three guys, because Cook left too.
Cook left too. Like we got to fix this. We got to fix this. We got to upgrade it, and we got to do it with the kind of players that work well for Steve Spagnuolo's system. That's the challenge, and that's where I think they're certainly going to shop there, because they got to get that. And look, we've said this time and time again. At some point, DJ, they got to get a compliment on the front line. Somebody that can make it happen. George Karlaftis has re-signed, but Chris Jones is getting older. And how long is he going to be interested in playing? So someone that's dominant on the interior also has to show
up. Dallas Cowboys 12 and 20. Defense feels definitely like the direction that they would be going. Yeah. They have needs at all levels of that defense. Would you prioritize one over the other with pick 12?
We talked about this before we jumped on. It has to be secondary, right? Like, I feel pretty good, pretty confident about their veteran front line on defense. I don't feel great about what they've assembled in the secondary. They have to upgrade that. They need to get better players all around to do what they want to do. They got away with it. Deron Bland had a moment. Trayvon Diggs had a couple moments, but they have not had the consistency on the perimeter for a long time. They need to be able, and I think about the Cowboys. I think about the vintage Cowboys with Prime and all this. They got to be able to lock up. And in that division where you have so many teams with multiple wide receivers, comes a bit of a problem.
Yeah, look at the corner. You look at safety. I like to think they come away with a couple of those guys here. They are 12, 20, and 92. To me, where the board kind of falls, it feels to me like 12 has got to be a defensive back.
You get your pick.
They could have their pick. There's a chance that they're sitting there staring at everybody.
And here's what I would say, because we talked about twice, right? So people have kind of associated or connected the dots with Dylan Thieneman and the Cowboys. And I would say this: you have to take him early so you can circle back to get the corner at 20.
Yeah.
We understand Mansur Delane probably is going to be gone. Whatever the grades medically come back on Jamar McCoy. Well, you take those two top corners out, to me, there's different tiers.
Yeah.
But when I think about the safety spot, man, I just think about you want to get someone that's going to really elevate your squad. I want to then get him early, come back and get corners, because then I'm talking about Avion Terrell, Colton Hood, even if you like Chris Johnson, whoever.
Yeah.
I think you can get the solid guy. But to me, the linchpin of that transformation is making sure you got the safety on board.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I think they go secondary, and I think safety does make a lot of sense for them at that spot. All right, Buck, I was one of the team I was going to hit you on in terms of, where they are and what they could do with their next one. That will be the Miami Dolphins. They are picking, they're at number 11, and they come back up and they pick at 30.
Well, I mean, this is about setting the culture. So the one thing, I got to make sure that off the field, they're going to come in and take care of business and really set the example that we want. Two, I just think about, man, this is going to be a corner all day on the perimeter. They have to step up and deal with some of the weapons in the division. They need to get it set off. And then on the other side, we talk about defensive playmaker, offensive playmaker. They gave more. They traded away two of the starting receivers. Well, not trade. They traded away one in Jalen Waddle. They cut Tyreek Hill. Yeah. They got to start from scratch, and they need someone that can command a double team, that can fill their role. But more importantly, he is going to be the guy that they want him to be in the locker room.
So John Eric, obviously, his dad. So when you look at the way that they do business, nobody will know it better than you do from your time in that group. It's really in both places, in Green Bay and Seattle. It's all under the same umbrella there.
Yeah.
So when you you go back into that draft room and you're having the discussion and you got needs all over the place, and you're trying to establish your culture and all those things, what is the core belief in that group? Because they have not taken wideouts, Buck. I mean, last year Matthew Golden was the exception.
Yeah, that's not normally where they shop at. I would say the thing that you can count on the Dolphins doing, traits, where they have the physical tools and the production. Not as much projection when it comes to it. I think they're going to invest in a really good football player that they can trust. That's why I think if Monroe Delane is there, they trust him. It's a done deal. Outside of that, DJ is interesting because I know they need pass catchers. They need guys that can go. At 30, to me, the sweet spot would be them taking Omar Cooper, because I think it kind of lines up with how I have him graded and where he would fit and what kind of role he could play in terms of being the solid guy. I think those two guys kind of represent and embody what they want to be and who they want to be under John Eric Sullivan.
Yeah, no, it's a foundation pick. It's their first one. So I think that first pick, to me, I think they want to put that one right in the middle of the fairway. That's why, again, like I keep coming back and looking at that going like a Caleb Downs, like kind of building up the middle of your team.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
It'd be great if he's there at 11. He gives them an easy replacement for Minka. I mean, he's kind of Minka light in terms of how he plays and what he does. But in terms of the football character, it's going to be exactly what they want.
All right, we got to get scooting here. Appreciate you guys hanging with us. I've got a conference call coming up, so we'll have that for a couple episodes. We'll dice that thing up where we get a lot of questions answered as we head towards the draft. So we'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.